So chapter 8 takes us into the exciting world of perfect competition. So we learned in chapter 7 about the different market structures, right? How if there's just one producer, it's called a monopoly. If there are many producers selling, there are many firms selling identical products, we're going to call this perfect competition. So we have some characteristics of perfect competition. Specifically, we have 4 criteria. So the first of the 4 criteria are we have many firms producing identical products. So let's think about this. What's something we don't buy in the grocery store that is very identical, and there are a lot of firms selling it around town? In fact, it's the only thing that we have in the economy that has its price plastered in giant font. Gasoline, right? So gasoline, we don't care if it's Conoco or whatever gasoline, right? Like if the gasoline is 20 cents cheaper on the other side of town, we're going to go to the other side of town to get that product because it's identical, right? I know that Chevron tries to add some stuff to theirs to make it supposedly better for your engine, but I don't know if anybody's actually buying that, right? Gasoline is gasoline. Of course, there's different grades of gasoline. You might have a newer car, you might have a fancy car, might need a different grade of gasoline, but within those grades, it's uniform, right? Some of the things in the grocery store that are uniform are just the things that we don't have brands on, right? So corn, apples, potatoes, all these kind of things, right? They're going to be purchased not because of the fact that, this potato is better than somebody else's potato, but they're going to be purchased because it meets this minimum criteria of being a potato, and then you find the cheapest potato for you, right? And then you can also do this within the markets of organic and non-organic. The second criteria that we have with perfect competition is that there are many buyers and many sellers. The third characteristic of perfect competition is that there's perfect information. What do we mean when we talk about perfect information? This means that the buyers and the sellers have all the relevant information to make rational decisions. So there's no way to hide some of your situation. So as a producer, there's no way to hide your profits. If you're a consumer, there's no way to hide your willingness to pay for something. So the producers and the consumers have perfect information, all the information that they need to make a rational decision. And the fourth key criteria for something to be perfect competition is free entry and exit. And what kind of goes with this is no barriers to entry. So sometimes if you want to start a business, you have to go and get a permit, or you have to have proprietary technology, or you have to have a really large plant, right? Like if you wanted to start producing electric cars, you can't just go out there and just start producing electric cars, right? Like it takes a lot of money to, design and build a plant that can actually make those electric cars for you to sell. So when we're talking perfect competition, we're talking about very simple enterprises, right? Very simple enterprises. And of course, there's no enterprise that has absolutely zero barrier to entry, but the perfect competition industry enterprises have the least barriers to entry. And in a way, we're defining this as an end of a spectrum. So there are going to be very few firms that meet all of these criteria, but there are firms that behave close enough to these criteria that it's useful for modeling purposes for looking at the dynamic actions within those markets. Part of the package when you are a perfectly competitive firm is that you're what's called a price taker. You are a price taker. So this essentially means you have no power over your price. So, obviously ranching is very big around here, right? When ranchers bring, their heads of cattle to slaughter, they don't get to choose how much they're selling them for. They're selling them at market price. No power over your final price, and so you must take the prevailing market price as your market price. So if the perfectly competitive firm is a price taker, then that means that they really only have one decision to make. How much to produce? Or what's my quantity? So they have to accept the price of its output as determined by the product market's demand and supply. And the maximum profit that we're going to find is where the difference between the total revenue and the total cost is greatest. And so let's look at that in the next video.